today is Maggie Vater. Maggie, are you a native of Oklahoma?
Well, yes, I was born in Enid, Oklahoma. I attended schools there and went to Oklahoma State University. And after that, my first job was at Vance Air Force Base. I worked in the Public Information Office for 3.5 years, and then I moved to Midland, Texas for some reason with two friends. And we were there for about 1.5 years, and then I moved to Oklahoma City, and I worked for Humble Oil Company until 1961. They were at 1400 Classen Boulevard. Now I was always interested in politics, but I got really interested when Howard Edmondson became the governor of Oklahoma. And so I was wishing I could go to Washington and work for a member of our delegation, but I didn't know anybody. And so one day my brother called me up from Enid and said, well, I talked to an aide from Senator Kerr, and there's an opening on a committee that he chairs. And if you'll come up to Enid and be here at 9 in the morning, he will interview you for that position. And so I went to Enid, and he interviewed me, and he hired me. And so that was the first week of December in 1961, and 3 weeks later, I was in Washington. In October of 1961, that was 2 months before I got my job in D.C., Senator Kerr invited President John Kennedy to come to Big Cedar, Oklahoma, for the dedication of a section of a United States highway that was part of the Pan American Highway that connected Mexico and Canada. And so he did, and a friend and I drove down to Big Cedar. And I have a little picture, but it's very little, that shows all our delegations sitting up on a stage, and the president and Governor Edmondson, who was governor. And out in the crowd, all the throng, I said, I'm out there. I'm sitting out there in that crowd. So anyway, that was, our whole delegation was there. You know, we had a wonderful delegation. And then my first day on the job on the Senate Space Committee was the 5th of January, 1962. And that was the early days of the space program. Alan Shepard had made his suborbital ride, and John Glenn was set to do the orbital ride in February. So that was pretty exciting committee to be on. After that, they had a hearing in our big hearing room. But before the hearing, where the committee were seated up there on the dais, they let the staff go in to meet these three astronauts, John Glenn, Alan Shepard, and Gus Grisham. So that's what we did. We went in and got to meet them all and got their autographs. See, on this, John Glenn has said, best regards to Margaret Vater. Senator Kerr was just a great man and a wonderful man. He had this unofficial name, King of the Senate. But anyway, everybody liked him, and he was good to his staff. So that was a nice year. That was 1960. On January 1, 1963, Senator Kerr had a heart attack and passed away. So that was a really tragic thing for everybody. He was only 66 years old. So now somebody needs to come up to take his seat to finish out the unexpired term, which was 2 more years. So Howard Edmondson was leaving office. He had 2 weeks before he left office. And so George Nye, who was lieutenant governor, well, Howard resigned, and George and I appointed him to fulfill the vacancy. So when he came up, he brought a few staff people with him, but he offered the job for anybody on Kerr staff that wanted to stay there and work for him, that they could have a job. But the Kerr family wanted the people that had been with Kerr for years and years to come back to Kerr-McGee here and maybe recruit somebody to be their candidate. But those of us that had been there a smaller amount of time stayed there. 1963 was the year that Martin Luther King made the "I Have a Dream" speech. It was August. And there were 250,000 people down by the Lincoln Memorial waiting for that speech. And I thought, gee, I'd like to go down there. But nobody said you could have the time off, but they probably would have let me have the time off. But I thought, that's 2.5 miles to walk down there. And it's August. And August in D.C. is just like August in Oklahoma. So I didn't go. And I've always regretted it. I thought, a friend of mine was in Wiesbaden, Germany, and they said, well, why don't you try to come over here? So I had some help, of course, to get a job, working as a secretary at U.S. Air Force's Europe, which was in Wiesbaden, Germany, but not at the air base. They had a paper headquarters called Lindsay Air Station. So I applied for a job and I got hired by remote control. I had to send them a picture so they could see what I looked like along with my resume. But anyway, they said, okay, you're hired, and they let you to work to Wiesbaden, Germany, to work for the Air Force at Lindsay Air Station, which was the headquarters for Air Forces in Europe. And that was January 1965. And I came back in the summer of the next year to go to work in the Pentagon, where I worked forever, it seems. Anyway, after I missed out on going to the "I Have a Dream" speech, I decided that if I was in D.C. and there was something going on, that I was going to be there. And so after the Persian Gulf War, there was a big military parade right down Constitution Avenue, and I was there. And then later on, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, they broke ground for that, and I was there. And then when they dedicated it, I was there. So, I mean, I just decided that no use in living in the nation's capital if you can't participate, or at least visit. So, but after about 7 years there, I had an opportunity to work for a gentleman who's a DOD representative of the Secretary of Defense in Vienna, Austria. So I went to work for him, and I was over there. It was some negotiations that were going on between the Warsaw Pact and NATO. So we would work for 3 months, or they would work for 3 months. They would always talk to each other, you know. And then we'd come back to the Pentagon for about 6 weeks or so, and then they'd resume the talks. So this went on for about almost 2.5 years. Finally, after 23 years, I retired from the federal service.
Very good. Now, how long have you lived here at Epworth?
January 29th, 2011, it'll be 9 years.
So much for your time and efforts and helping us out with this, and we sure appreciate you.
You're welcome. I have plenty of time.